All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open what I like to call the ultimate underdog blueprint. If you look at our history, the most profound changes in our communities didn't start in high-rise corner offices or with folks holding fancy official titles. They started on the ground. We're talking everyday folks, from the Pullman porters to local organizers who just decided to speak absolute truth to corrupt systems. So if you've ever looked at the state of your neighborhood, seen the systemic neglect and thought, man, somebody needs to say something, but then immediately second-guessed yourself with, but who am I to speak? Well, this one is for you. The story of the biblical figure Amos is literally the original playbook for that exact kind of disruption.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our 5-step survival and disruption guide for today. 1. The blue-collar prophet. 2. Purpose without a pedigree. 3. The trap of comfort. 4. Surviving truth's cancel culture. And 5. The lion has roared.
So, starting with section 1, the blue-collar prophet, shattering the illusion of leadership. Look back through our history and you'll see a pattern, right? The most powerful, transformative voices rarely come from the expected places. We often have this illusion that leadership requires a specific pedigree or passing some kind of respectability politics test. But Amos completely shatters that illusion. The expectation back then was someone seminary trained, wealthy, or holding an official institutional title. But the reality? Amos was a working man. He was a shepherd and a fig farmer. He's honestly the ancient equivalent of the sanitation workers who marched in Memphis or that auntie who runs the neighborhood block association. Amos proves that God can take someone with a regular, blue-collar life who doesn't fit the mold of respectability politics and use them to deliver one of the boldest messages in history.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the deep, systemic injustices of Amos's time perfectly mirror the inequalities we see today. In 8th century BC Israel, the headline was a booming economy and political stability. But the reality on the ground? Oppression of the poor, moral corruption, and spiritual arrogance. I mean, does that sound familiar? How often do we hear national reports about a thriving, booming economy? But when we look closely at our own neighborhoods, we see longtime residents getting priced out by gentrification, left behind by redlining, and marginalized by systemic neglect. Amos stepped right into that exact environment to expose the rot hiding beneath the prosperity.
Moving to section 2, purpose without a pedigree, your calling is your credential. In this moment, Amos delivered what might literally be the ultimate historical clapback. A high-ranking priest named Amaziah basically tried to gatekeep the prophetic tradition. He told Amos he didn't have the right credentials, or perhaps the right tone, to speak on these issues, essentially telling him to go back to his own neighborhood and keep his mouth shut. And Amos responds by saying, I was neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but I was a shepherd, and I also took care of sycamore fig trees. He refused to code switch. He refused to apologize for his roots. His authority came entirely from his calling, not from the approval of the elite.
This right here is a staple truth in the Black church tradition, and I want you to really hear it today. Stop waiting for institutional validation or a green light from an expert to speak up for your community. Think of figures like Fannie Lou Hamer. She didn't hold a political science degree, but she possessed the undeniable moral authority of her lived experience. Your background, your day job, or your lack of connections cannot stop you if you have truth on your side. God doesn't always call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Your ordinary life is the perfect platform for an extraordinary purpose.
Which brings us to section 3, the trap of comfort, looking beyond your own front door.
In Amos's time, the nation was wealthy on paper, making it incredibly easy for folks who were doing well to simply ignore the folks being stepped on. For us, this speaks directly to the temptation of middle-class flight or settling into corporate comfort. Look, just because your bills are paid and just because you've managed to make it out and get your family into a comfortable situation doesn't mean society's systems are functioning justly. It is so easy to let personal success isolate us. But true community leadership operates on the principle of Ubuntu. I am because we are. We have a collective responsibility to lift as we climb. Don't let comfort make you blind.
Next up, section 4, surviving truth's cancel culture, the cost of disruption. Let's be real. When you expose the rot in a system, people in power will actively try to shut you down. Speaking truth to power in Black history has always come with the threat of being canceled. From the civil rights era to today, society has a very predictable reaction to truth-tellers. The system will label you a radical or a troublemaker. They'll pressure you to fall in line, attempting to mute your voice to protect the corrupt status quo. When you disrupt the comfort of the powerful, you better expect massive systemic resistance.
We need to totally redefine courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is obedience and speaking truth despite heavy opposition. It's about accepting the very real cost of disruption. Sometimes courage is standing up in your workplace when diversity initiatives are being threatened. Sometimes it's speaking out at a city council meeting when your community's concerns are being completely ignored. Honestly, standing up for what is right often means standing completely alone.
So the crucial point is this: when the system pushes back, do not back down. That friction doesn't mean you're wrong. It's confirmation that you are shaking the table, that you are right over the target. Human rejection is not a cancellation of your calling. It's just confirmation that your truth is exposing their darkness and making the status quo incredibly uncomfortable. You are exactly where you need to be.
And finally, Section 5, The Lion Has Roared, the undeniable call to action.
Amos described his calling with an analogy that honestly mirrors the passion of a Sunday sermon's climax. The lion has roared, who will not fear? The sovereign Lord has spoken, who can but prophesy? In the wild, a lion's roar commands absolute attention. Amos is describing that undeniable stirring in your spirit, that ancestral call to justice. When that truth hits your heart with that kind of clarity, staying quiet just to keep the peace becomes an absolute impossibility. The message burns like a fire shut up in your bones, and you have no choice but to let it out.
So I want you to take a second and really think about this. What lions are roaring today?
And this brilliantly illustrates how the ancient text speaks directly to our modern reality. The societal decay Amos witnessed mirrors the very real lions roaring in our streets right now. We're talking systemic racism, the school-to-prison pipeline, the maternal mortality crisis for Black women, economic redlining, and the exploitation of the vulnerable. God is not distant from this suffering. He sees the economic exploitation and the dishonest leadership. The question isn't whether the warnings are there. The question is, are we paying close enough attention to hear the roar?
To summarize the playbook, here is your community mandate. 1. Listen to the warnings and the hard truths of the marginalized. 2. Accept your ordinary calling. Remember, your background never disqualifies you. 3. Speak the uncomfortable truth, fully expecting that resistance will come. And 4. Trust the outcome to God. True community leadership requires both the deep compassion to care about the vulnerable and the unwavering spine to disrupt the systems hurting them.
Listen, you don't need a fancy title, a seminary degree, or a corner office to shift the culture. An ordinary person standing unapologetically on the truth is an unstoppable force. So, will you speak when it's uncomfortable? Will you move even when the world says you're unqualified? The playbook is in your hands. Your move.